Welcome back to Just Build It. The idea behind the show is very simple. AI has dramatically lowered the barrier to building software, but if anyone can build it, what actually changes? Today's guest is my good friend, John Koelliker, the CEO and co-founder of Leland. A little bit of quick background. Leland started as a coaching marketplace, helping people like myself, ambitious people across experts for career, educational goals, MBA, consulting, product management, and much, much more. But today, the company is evolving into a much broader platform, including what I believe is a major focus on helping professionals and teams build real AI skills. And I think that's what really prompted this conversation and makes it very interesting because John and Leland aren't just asking, can AI teach people and help people build things? But it's actually helping answer a deeper question, which is how do we enable folks to thrive in this new era of AI? So today we're going to talk a little bit about his path to upskilling, the AI Builder program, what skills even matter in an AI native world. John, thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, it's great to be here. Thanks for the introduction.
Awesome. Well, just to get things started, I know I gave a little bit of an overview on kind of yourself and the company, but maybe just taking a step back to give context. Leland started as kind of this coaching marketplace based on MBA students. What was kind of the original insight behind the company, and how did you kind of get to this AI upskilling aspect of the platform?
Yeah, great question. We started with the vision that we wanted Leland to be a place that unlocked human potential, and we knew that needed to be constrained in the beginning, as any, I guess, marketplace needs to be. And so we started with this. MBA applicants was a very specific niche, but we felt like it was important because even though it's a smaller subset of people, they tend to have all sorts of different career interests. And there's people that are, going into product, going into consulting, starting their own company, all sorts of different things. And so we felt like if we could support that group, we could then go on to help them in a bunch of different ways. That's, of course, as you said, expanded into any sort of career educational goal under the sun. But as everyone knows, AI has changed every single one of those people's jobs overnight. And so now the question they're asking, it's the same customer base. They're still, just as stressed, probably more stressed or anxious or excited about, their careers and what it means. But they're all asking us, what does AI mean for me personally? And so I think as we've continued to grow and explore how can we continue to deepen our relationships with our customers and support them, it comes back to how are we building this home for ambition in an age of AI? And what are the skills they need to build? And that's led us to some pretty awesome discoveries around this this AI Builder program and actually becoming more of not just a consumer marketplace, but a platform that supports consumers and even teams. And so we've started to do a lot more B2B as well.
That's awesome. A lot of great nuggets there that I could double click into. But I think the thing that I just would love to get more color on is the AI Builder program. So you talked about that evolution and the skill gaps that maybe folks are seeing when they come to Leland from an AI perspective. Walk me
Yeah.
through the program. Who is it for? What should someone be able to do by the end? What are the skills that you're trying to develop that you think are necessary in this next evolution of AI first builders?
Yeah. So I think what's interesting, if you look at this AI shift in every company, it's clear that it is changing how work is getting done in each of these functions. Engineering was the first, I think, function that really started to adopt. And there's obviously still engineering teams across the spectrum of adoption. Some have built their own AI engineers that are, or coding agents that are building while people are sleeping. Others are still, just using some code gen tools to help, finish their lines of code. But it's clear that function has had their adoption journey. But what about everyone else? What about the marketer? What about the sales? What about the operations person? What about the VC? It seems like adoption in those functions has been a lot more sporadic. You'll get people that are tinkering. You'll get one AI champion at a company that's pushing the boundaries and has automated half their job, and then the rest of the company is still using just ChatGPT for little research projects here or there. And so that was what we set out to solve. Was companies don't have the time to to keep up, right? It's just like the joke that you have to be unemployed to actually like learn to be on the forefront of AI, which is sort of true. Or it has to be your job, and we have to have a team of people that are dedicated to updating our curriculum every single day because things, Claude released 2 things today, so and then Copilot released stuff last week, and then Gemini, it's like every model is also pushing the boundaries here. So that's one problem. The other problem is that like the adoption is not just of a new tool, it's of like a deep behavior change. And so you're not just like learning to use a new software, you're actually like becoming an agent manager, which is just a very different job than we've all had, right? Like most of us, as I even became a people manager, it was uncomfortable for me because I liked executing, and now my job is to like empower others to execute, and I still like executing, but as an agent manager, I'm now building and tuning systems that do work for me. And that is just a very different way of doing work. And so I think teaching people what that means for them. And then I think a lot of like training programs are just really theoretical and like basic. And so we really try to dive into the deep end and like actually help people build. And it's not meant to be like a learning experience. It's meant to be a real building experience tailored to your actual job. And the whole point is like, how do you get your team or you to walk across the coals and become this like agent manager that's building automations and workflows that scale your impact, as opposed to just using AI as like a supplemental 10-20% improvement.
Yeah, you hit on a great point there, especially at the end. We were talking about a lot of AI education to me these days is generic, a lot of kind of video watching or kind of social media content that's focused on hyping up the potential of AI. But I really think there's nothing like getting your hands dirty and actually learning how to build something. How do you kind of think about AI education in the context of this program? Obviously, it sounds like people from start to finish are actually building something and automating some of their workflows. What do you think the difference is about like learning, quote unquote, about AI and actually becoming an AI builder in and of itself?
Yeah. Yeah. I was talking to someone the other day who said, hey, I got up in all hands and I told my company that if they didn't adopt AI, we would have to fire them. Essentially, it was probably not his exact words, but like that was essentially what the message was that was conveyed. And I think that's a lot of people are getting that message. But then then he was like, I couldn't sleep at night because I'm not helping them adopt it. I'm just telling them they need to. And so I think a lot of it is like, how do you not just tell people that AI is great and be a Twitter hype video that tells someone that everything's changing and everyone's cooked, and you actually start to help people break down their yeah, let me back up. If you're going to automate your job, or at least core parts of your job, in an attempt to create additional impact in your role, you need to break down what your job even is, right? Which is like a collection of tasks that you execute on with like a judgment layer on top, which is like you, and you're sort of like deciding which of these tasks you should prioritize. You're deciding you have taste in how you go about execution. And so the program is very much like trying to redefine what your work is, which is, let me break down my job at the fundamental level of everything that I do. Let me start to build certain automations that can chunk out some of those pieces, and then as you go through the program, you're kind of increasing your level of abstraction. So maybe to start, you're automating your email task. And then over time, you're starting to automate some more advanced tasks. And then over time, your agents are starting to talk to each other. And then eventually you have like an agent manager that's managing those agents, and they're kind of helping each other get better. And obviously there's a whole journey that you have to go through to get there. But I think a lot of it is like starting with who is the individual and breaking down what they're doing, as opposed to saying, this is our curriculum. You got to learn this, and this. Of course, we're going to take people through a curriculum, but it's meant to be more about helping them understand what's possible in their own job, because that's where the magic is, right? Is your own work.
Very much so. Is you kind of see the effects firsthand, and it makes you realize what's possible. But I also think, as you mentioned, kind of the skills compound, right? So like as you're even in the multi-level program that you developed at Leland, you're seeing how something from as basic as email automation kind of leads to workflows, broader agentic structures, and more advanced building. It takes time and it compounds over time. And I think you might have an interesting story to tell here, but I'm just curious, like seeing people that you work with, seeing students that you've coached go through this, like what are the interesting like aha moments that you've seen people have when they're like they
Yeah.
unlock in their mind like what's possible, and just walk me through kind of what that looks like from your perspective as a teacher, as a coach, as a leader.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting how magic moments tend to be very individual, but they're like deeply profound when you experience them. I was talking to someone the other day, last week, who told us, "Hey, before I went through the program, we had a role on my team. He's a VP of marketing, runs a pretty big org. He had all of his leaders and managers take the program alongside him, and he said we had a role scoped on our team that we expected to be a job that would be like a full-time job for at least 2 years." Because there was just so much complexity in the task, and there was like a lot of, it was a lot of manual stuff, but it was a lot of work. And we started to go through your program, and we started to like realize that there were some things that we could probably automate. And so we all started to kind of collaborate on this thing, and we eventually built this system that like automated the need for that job away entirely. And he was describing to me the job, and it's like it's intricate and it's complex. I didn't really fully understand, but like the light in his eyes when he was like, Claude did this like core thing that we thought was going to take months, and Claude did it in 20 minutes, and it like just changed how they're thinking about headcount planning and how their ability to scale revenue and reduce cost. So I don't know. I think there's time savings, there's ability to just get so much more done. I actually think time savings is the wrong way to measure, because who of us is working less in a world of AI? It's like not very few of us. Unfortunately, maybe one day we'll automate all of us away and we'll go home and just relax all day. But it seems like the answer is actually accelerating impact, right? It's
Yep.
instead of just getting 20% gains, it's getting like 20x gains, which is addicting. And because all of a sudden you have this superpower. And so I think that's where the most of the magic moments come in around being able to just do so much more, whether it's like, pipeline generation on the sales side. We had someone that built this really sophisticated agent team that's talking to each other and generating pipeline and qualifying it and pricing it, or just automating certain jobs, so that they can go work on, more strategic stuff. I think that's the other big thing.
Yeah, I definitely feel that myself. I feel like leverage increases, but ultimately there's just so much more to be done that it hasn't really made things any easier, any quicker. I guess the one common theme though that I have heard in talking to founders and other investors, I think when talking about leverage, especially in terms of AI, I think there's a feeling that the top 10% of builders, the people who are using AI, are really going to leverage themselves to be 100x impact type of employees, or coders or workers, whatever it may be. And then there's going to be like a massive gulf, and this is perhaps creating this sense of separation between layers of impact within the org. Are you kind of seeing that? And do you think like that the AI enablement layer is so critical, and ultimately why maybe you started some of these builder programs? I think like people are actually seeing kind of that bifurcation of people who are using AI in a competent and advanced way, and how that's kind of creating that leverage that you're kind of talking about as well.
Yeah, a couple thoughts on this. I've wrestled with this a lot as a leader, that there are certain people that are becoming so valuable that like all sorts of pay structures, just like you have to throw out the window. Like you have to figure out like how do I think about valuing this person relative to a peer that isn't. And I think and because like in historical, or maybe historical, like 2 years ago, not that long ago, when you had like a 10x engineer or someone that was like really, really, really effective, it actually was pretty rare that they were 10x better. Like they were usually more effective. They were faster, but like they were still writing the code. They were still creating the marketing campaign, whatever it is. Like they were faster. They were more impactful, but they weren't. You still kind of needed the bricklayers or the people, the ammunition, to go and like actually execute. If Claude or pick your model is now the ammunition executing, then you need the architects or the barrels, if you will, that are actually producing, or that are kind of teeing that ammunition up, or setting up the system to go scale. And they are 10, 20, 30, 100x better. And so like, what does that mean from a compensation perspective? What does that mean from a hiring plan perspective? Do I only hire these types of people? Do I still need certain types of lower cost resources? I think there's a big question. The other thought that I'll share is that it seems to me that every one of us that's like, trying to adopt AI is feeling faster, better, more leverage. But what separates the people that get to that top 10%, 5%, 1%, whatever it might be, is instead of using AI to do the thing, they're building the system to do the thing. And then they're working on the system. And it's so addicting to just go do the thing with the help of AI because you're so fast, right? Like you can, if I'm an engineer and I can go write a bunch of code and that code is generated by AI and I'm managing a couple of agent windows, whatever, awesome. Like I'm already probably 5x better than I used to be. But if I've created this background coding agent and I'm tuning this system and it's like working while I'm sleeping, like my impact is no longer in the 2 to 5 to 10x better. It's like this thing is always on. This thing is like is so valuable. So that's really what we're trying to do is help people be along for that ride and learn the skills to be able to do that, because we don't want people to get replaced. We want them to figure out how do they work on the next most important task. I've never met a company that's finished their backlog, right? I've never met a company that's done working. There's always more to do. And so if you can be that builder, you can be super important, impactful.
That's super interesting. I think that also begs the question to your point about like, how do you value folks within an org? And then also what do the top 1% look like from like a, broader talent perspective? Like, how do you kind of evaluate these folks more broadly? Like, what is the new signal of competence, I guess? Is it kind of the projects, portfolios, proof of skills? Is it kind of your firsthand work? Like, what is truly differentiated in that? I think you kind of alluded to the fact that you're still maybe like figuring that out over time, but do you have any hypotheses on like, how do you actually measure that? And what's both in your company, but then also even when you're interviewing people, like how do you kind of get to the bottom of that?
Yeah, it's a really good question and a hard question. We think about it a lot as we're working with these large enterprises that are saying, how will I know that the builder program is successful? And it's, people do create a portfolio. They will learn certain skills. You could assess that, but I think it's deeper than that. I think it's like, it's how you work. It's watching. If you watch someone, so then it's a measure, how do you measure how someone works? There actually are pretty interesting tools. Like I can hook up connectors to my device and it can assess how AI native I am. And so we're building a lot of this stuff that we can run a skill and it'll go through your email. It'll go through, a lot of the different things that you do every day, your calendar, and it will assess opportunities for you to continue to, it's not meant to be like a, slap your wrist, you're not AI native enough. It's more so helping you understand, hey, you spent 3 hours in email yesterday. Like maybe you still have to do the final, look through, but that might be able to cut down to 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And there's this other thing that you do that like, you could automate or you could have an agent do it. So I think a lot of it is it's really assessing how people work is what it comes down to. And that's where the magic lives. And if you've watched someone that's super AI native work, it is special. Like it's most of my magic moments have come when I've just observed someone work differently.
Interesting. I'd love to, we'll talk offline, but I'd love to get some like best in class examples. It's funny to have like AI evaluating your use of AI.
I know. There's a lot of meta stuff with AI, right? It's like, we have these like TA office hours for the builder program. And half the time it's like, well, have you dropped that into Claude? And it's like, no, but I should. And then, see what the error says. Oh, it helped me fix it. And you start to like, it takes like a couple human conversations to learn that. And then you realize like, this is actually pretty valuable for me as a tool to, the meta side of it all is really interesting.
Very interesting. Just switching gears slightly, the last two things I just want to kind of spend some time on. One is the core business. So obviously, amazing coaches. I've used the platform, like amazing interactions. I'm curious how that changes with AI. Like ultimately, people can learn so much now from ChatGPT and Claude. They can personalize their educational, course load, design, landscape, whatever it may be, through their own personalized lens. Like, how do you see the tension, I guess, between kind of what AI brings to the table and then what the role of a coach is when the learner has access to AI?
Yeah, we think about this all the time. I think there's a couple important human level points that we are learning. For one, I think there's real value in relationships. People still care about a human touch point. Now, of course, there's going to be certain people that can't afford that human touch point, and that's where AI and content and other things that we can do that lower the cost are super valuable, and we're doing a lot there. And there's also a lot we can do. Like we are transcribing all of these messages, all of these conversations with thousands of coaches every single day, engaging with people on all these important topics, and we can build agents on all of these sub topics for these coaches, and so they can scale their time. And someone that doesn't have the money to go talk to Glenn can talk to Glenn's fundraising agent that's based on thousands and thousands of words that Glenn has talked about with someone on the call. So there's a lot that you can do with AI to scale people, but there are also some human level stuff around accountability, around the relationship, around like people actually. I think we think people want personalization, but people actually want the golden path. They want someone to tell them like, here is what worked for Glenn when he applied to this school or this job, and you can follow it exactly. And you can tailor it to, there's certain things where you can go off or apply it to your situation. But people still want like a blessed expert level view on things. So I think we're still working through what's valuable, what's less valuable. It's clear that people are still desperate to find a job and they still want alpha in that process. And so figuring out where can we provide that alpha, alongside a typical more general LLM is something we're constantly experimenting with. But we think there's still a lot of opportunity within that.
Awesome. Really curious to see how that evolves, and we'll definitely be keeping a close eye on that. I know we have a few minutes left here. Just a couple last quick questions. Wanted to touch on kind of the B2B angle here. You've talked about how you're running this AI builder program for some consumers, but there's also companies that are looking to kind of up level their whole team. Like, what's that conversation been like, and how do companies feel about AI adoption? Because just speaking from my perspective as an investor, it feels like a lot of folks are eager to adopt, as you said, forcing it top down, but ultimately not really understanding what that entails. What's been
Yeah.
your kind of read or vibe on the situation as you kind of talk to some of these bigger companies that are looking for help getting up to speed?
Yeah, what we're seeing is it's an urgent top priority for every company almost right now. Um, Engineering, it's going okay. Could be better, but it's going. And most other roles, it's slower than they want,
Okay.
and they're not sure how to. And that's really what we're trying to help them with, which is, hey, instead of trying to like have a bunch of your people tinkering and wasting time, level everyone up together on the forefront of what matters now. If things change, which they will, you can come back in 6 months and do it again or whatever. But like let's not have our whole company tinkering around and praying that like they figure it out. Let's leverage the world's best experts. Like we're leaning on this collection of experts that have been building and are at all these top companies, to develop our curriculum, so we can sort of bring that to people, and help up level their org really quickly.
Amazing. I don't know if you have time for one last question here, but you
Yeah.
might have to go. I
I
think
got
the last thing on my plate is, I hear it from a lot of folks that listen to this podcast that talk to me about wanting to become more AI capable, but it feels intimidating. They don't want to go in a terminal on Claude Code. They don't want to understand how Claude Cowork works in the background when you're prompting it. What do you think is a good, useful, and actionable first step for the folks listening to this, other than signing up for the AI Builder program? What should they think about doing to really just get started and become more AI native?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I would do is I would start with asking your LLM. Uh, I would hook it up to a few things. Hook it up to your Slack. Hook it up to your calendar. Hook it up to your Gmail. Hook it up to whatever you can, whatever your organization allows, and tell it to dig in on those things and identify opportunities to automate, parts of your role, and just see what it comes back. Like you'd be shocked how much magic is in just having AI analyze your work and what you've done. and then just start by building. Just start, right? I think it's intimidating, but I think there's so much you learn just by getting out there. We tell people all the time through the Builder program, if you come to a couple of our sessions and you grab one thing, and then that like spirals you into going off and building for the next 6 weeks, and you don't listen to anything else we say, that's a huge win for us. Like we're trying to spark curiosity and get you going, but this is a long journey, and it really just takes a high agency, high action person to go get it.
Awesome. Well, John, this is a great conversation. Really appreciate you being here. And this feels like an amazing opportunity for Leland, not just helping people learn about AI, but helping them become the kind of people who can actually use it to reach even bigger goals. So thank you again for being here. Really appreciate the time.